corpses have been discovered in what is already being called the most brutal and heinous crime in local history.
Maybe this wasn't such a good idea.
Sex, sex, sex. You guys are getting boring, you know that?
What would a weekend in the country be without sex?
I like you a lot. I was thinking that maybe, we could...
I don't think so. Look, I'm gonna go outside for a few minutes, and then when I get back in, we'll talk, okay?
Who are you?
Welcome back. It is Friday. Welcome back. This is VHS Reanimated, and I'm Creepy Gil. And every week you come here and I recommend a classic horror movie that I feel like doesn't get as much love or attention as I think it deserves. Have you seen Friday the 13th? Part 3. This one is special for a lot of reasons. It was one of the first Friday the 13th movies I've seen, and it is the most important one in the franchise because this is the installment where Jason gets the hockey mask. For you Friday the 13th buffs, you already know this. For everyone else that's a little bit more casual to the horror genre, the slasher genre, in the first Friday the 13th, Jason is barely in it. His mother is the killer, spoiler. And in the second Friday the 13th, Jason wears like a burlap sack on his head and he's kind of like a hillbilly. But in this one, part 3, he dons the iconic hockey mask, which becomes a symbol for him and honestly a symbol for slasher films in general. Everyone recognizes the hockey mask with Jason more than they do with hockey, honestly. And that comes from someone that grew up playing hockey. We always just called it a Jason mask what the goalie would wear. Anyway, this movie was right in the early 80s, like 3D craze. So sometimes you see the title is Friday the 13th Part 3D. Sometimes it's just Part 3. It's pretty much just a regular movie though. There's nothing too fancy better. There's maybe like 5 or 6 off the top of my head 3D gags where something goes really close to the camera. In the beginning there's some fun ones like handing a joint to the camera or whatever. They always just make an excuse to put something right into the camera. And then when Jason starts killing people toward the last half of the movie, there's a handful of weapons coming right at the camera. Ooh. But it looks really dated. I imagine maybe if you saw this in the cinema with some 3D goggles, it was cool, but watching it back now, it seems a little bit silly. What I do appreciate though is this movie's really well lit. It stands out a lot from the other Friday the 13th because most of the action takes place in the daytime. And that was a byproduct of shooting in 3D. They needed like really bright lighting. So not so much creeping around at night like every other movie. This one is mostly broad daylight kills, which is kind of cool. It stands out in the series for sure, and that's why I'm recommending it this week. Plot-wise, where do we start? It's basically like a couple's retreat. This one kind of steers away from the camp and the camp counselors and all that stuff. It's like there's 4 couples. There's like a stoner couple. There's the lead character, Chris, and her boyfriend. I think his name is Rex or something. Red, or something. And there's another couple of like nobodies. The one dude walks around on his hands a lot. And then the most interesting couple, in my opinion anyway, is this dude Shelly, that is kind of like an overweight dude that's a little bit sad, but I think he's cool. And he's there on a blind date with his other girl Vera, that I think is also pretty damn cool. So they're like the odd couple. They didn't know each other before the trip, and then they get fixed up and sip each other on the drive there and get to know each other and blah blah blah. Vera doesn't really like Shelly because he's kind of fat and sad and always playing pranks, but I freaking love Shelly.
Damn it, Shelly! Why do you do these stupid things?
I just want you to like me.
I do like you, but not when you act like a jerk.
Being a jerk is better than being a nothing.
I never said you were nothing.
You don't have to say it. I could tell.
And then anyway, they go up to the cabin in the woods, and Jason doesn't really die in part 2. So there's no real reanimating Jason, or Jason's back from the dead like becomes normal in the next few movies. This one he's just still alive. It kind of picks up the day after. Actually, on the way to camp, they like pass the murder scene and you see the ambulances emptying the bodies out of the Crystal Lake camp. So that's kind of cool. This is like literally the next day, just further down the lake. So Jason's still alive. He starts creeping around and killing people, and most of those kills use like 3D gimmicky blah 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 blahs. And the gang of teenagers here, they also run into a biker gang at a gas station at one point, and Shelly's a freaking badass and he runs over the motorcycles, and that causes like a little extra like conflict. The gang is after these kids, Jason's after these kids, Jason's also after the gang. One of the biker members is this girl Fox. Like, she's super friggin' cool and has like some raccoon pelt or some shit hanging off her belt. I always thought that was hella cool as a kid. So then yeah, after that, conventional slasher. One by one, Jason tears his way down through the group of friends till you're eventually left with the main character, Chris, who actually puts up like one hell of a fight for the damsel in distress, last girl alive. He's usually just running and screaming. She takes it to him almost right away. She's afraid, she's running, but she doesn't really back down like you'd expect. My best part in Friday the 13th Part 3. The best part for me is Shelly, as I mentioned a few seconds ago. I think Shelly is the highlight of this movie, besides Jason, obviously. He kind of like rotund, I would say. He's got a big afro, a cool sense of humor. He carries around this like box of prank toy. I don't know what you'd even call that, like a magic kit or something, but for like pranks and jokes. And he's trying to fit in and make people laugh, but he knows that he's not really wanted. Like, he's aware he's the black sheep. At one point, you know, he's sulking around the cabin and Chris is like, yo dude, how come you're not down at the lake with everybody else? And he's like, oh, they're going skinny dipping and I'm not skinny enough. And I just love it. It's something I could always relate to as a kid, as a teenager, as a full-grown adult. I always kind of feel like, yeah, I was invited, but was I really invited? And Shelly just being weird and happy to be weird, and he asked Vera to be his girlfriend, and Vera kind of shuts him down. But then, like, a few minutes later, Vera's, you know, she's like, I can't remember what happened. I think, oh yeah, she tried to buy something and didn't have enough money, so then 3D gag coming up. Friggin' Shelly tosses her the wallet right into the camera, and she takes the wallet and buys some junk. So then she's like hanging out at the dock later that night, going through his wallet, and finds like a picture of like Shelly and his grandma and his wallet, and she thinks it's super sweet, and you can kind of see, you kind of read into it like she's gonna reconsider. She's gonna go on a date with Shelly. She judged that book by the cover, and then when she sat down and thumbed her way through it, she's kind of impressed. She's into it. But then, you know, as luck would have it, as she gets up to go back inside, she gets brutally murdered by Jason. Sorry, Shelly. Actually, not sorry, Shelly. He doesn't live much longer than this anyway. He's not really missing out on anything. Spoiler, Shelly doesn't live, but Shelly is my favorite part of the movie.
I did it! I did it! I did it! Did I do it?
Yes, you did it. You were great.
That was great!
I also got to sneak in some props and shout outs to Henry Manfredini for the score on this film. And he does the soundtracks for all, if not all, most of the Friday the 13th movies, as well as a few other horror movies. But Friday the 13th Part 3 is his masterpiece. Like, this film has got the soundtrack to keep you moving. Just, yeah, you feel that right there? Yeah, right where it hurts. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Best death in this movie. I think best death is gonna be something carrying on from now on, starting last week, but also starting now. Best death with a lift. My favorite kill in this movie is honestly when Chris kills Jason, or at least the first try at killing Jason. She like knocks him out and then wraps a noose around his neck and rolls him out of the barn. And I just think that's like so barbaric and creative at the same time. The way you can like see the weight of Jason's like this like 300-pound dude, and Chris has like got her shoulder into him, rolling him out. And then just there's like a quick shot of like Jason, you know, falling like 15 feet, and then the noose snapping tight, and then like, you know, his dead weight. Just looks like a really good neck-breaking hanging. But, you know, he doesn't die. It's friggin' Jason. But I'm still gonna count that as the best death. Because all the other ones have like kind of cheesy 3D gags that, yeah, they might be cool, but they don't age as well as this one that doesn't have any 3D gimmick. Just Jason getting hung from the side of a barn. Tad bit sucks this week. I'm gonna have to give tad bit sucks to we don't actually see Jason get the mask. As important as it is for horror as a genre, for Jason Voorhees as a franchise, this movie doesn't show him get the mask. We see Shelly, my friggin' boy, wearing the mask and like a scuba diver outfit in one scene walking around. And then the next time we see Jason, he's wearing the mask. And you're like, hey, that was Shelly's mask, what the hell? And then in the next scene, we find Shelly with his throat slit, not wearing the mask. So you kind of, you know, hypothesis proven, Shelly was killed for the mask. And then the rest of the movie, Jason's wearing the mask. The rest of Jason's, you know, film career. This is 1982, we're up into whatever, 2018 something. Math, 36 years-ish. He's been wearing the mask, but we don't see him put it on. I guess back in the filming of this, they didn't realize how much of an iconic scene this would be, or how much this is going to change the history of slashers and horror, become the face of horror, a parody of horror, everything. So we don't actually see it go on, which this could have been like a cool dun 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 dun. But no, we don't get that. We just see Jason wearing a hockey mask out of the blue. Okay, let's wrap this up. Friday the 13th, Part 3, criminally underrated in my opinion. Nobody talks about Part 3. Nobody really talks about, I don't know, which other, I think 4 gets the most love, and there's nothing wrong with 4. Don't get me wrong, the final chapter, great flick. But 3, come on, where's the love for Part 3? This is the movie where Jason gets the friggin' hockey mask. It is October. This is Halloween month. Everyone should be at home every night watching a horror movie. And if you're at home watching a horror movie and you don't know which one to put on, it's Friday the 13th, Part 3.
What all you two are gonna do this weekend? Smoke dope?
Why not, man? Is there a law against it?
There are better things to do with your life.
Like what?
I can't think of anything.
See Jason get the hockey mask, see all these cheesy 3D kills, see my boy Shelly stealing the show with his big hair and his big gut and his even bigger heart. I'll be back next week with another recommendation. Until then, this is VHS Reanimated. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do what you can to get the word out. I'm gonna, keep doing these. These are really fun. Until next week, though, like start carving those jack-o'-lanterns, getting your costumes together, do what you gotta do to get ready for Halloween, but please, I ask you all please, remember, rewind or die.